Greetings, my fellow East Texans and all those who wish you were. This is Adam Morrow with Express Employment Professionals, and I'm here at the world headquarters of Tyler Junior College with Dr. Mike Metke, Chancellor and CEO.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm really excited because today we have the opportunity to follow up on the East Texas Employment Survey that was revealed at a luncheon on May 29th. And Dr. Metke, thank you again for participating in that event.
My pleasure.
And we had the opportunity at that event to discuss the results of that survey, and but we also put it out to those who participated, who listened, to say, hey, what other questions do you have? And so we put it out there. The people have spoken, and they have questions. And so Dr. Metke has agreed to just go a little bit deeper into some of the things we discussed. Dr. Metke, the things that you had a chance to speak to at our luncheon were two questions from our survey. The first one was, how easy is it to recruit? And the answer was, it's hard. East Texans said to the tune of 65% is very difficult. And then the other question was, when you're hiring, how long does it take to get somebody in the door? And the answer was about 3 weeks, which is right on par with the national average. It takes some time to do that. And Dr. Metke, from your position here at Tyler Junior College and TJC's position in the community, I think is strategically and uniquely located because part of your mission is to equip the workforce here. And you guys do an amazing job. Over 13,000, I believe, are enrolled here. Is that correct?
Close to 13,000.
Close to 13,000?
Yeah, it depends how you figure it out, because we talk about credit versus non-credit and full-time. But if we included all the workforce and all the continuing ed, it's probably over 20,000. But in terms of credit students, we're close to 13.
That's amazing. So you guys have a tremendous impact on the community and on being responsive to businesses to develop skills that businesses are looking for. So we're really thankful for the insights that you might be able to offer to us. So I want to just talk through a couple of questions that have been thrown out there by area businesses. The first one is, it has to do with benefits, and I'm curious on your perspective on this. When businesses are recruiting, one person wonders, how important are the ancillary benefits as opposed to just pay? Any thoughts on that?
Sure, it's something we've had at the college. And ours is a little different, I think, in terms of the people we hire. But people who go into things like teaching and working for government and whatever are willing to take less money, but value security and predictability and those kinds of benefits. So it's a pretty high value for us. And we were losing people because the college didn't participate in Social Security, and that had impact. So we ended up, while I was here, creating our own Social Security alternative that's in so many ways a better benefit than Social Security, because the people own theirs and we contribute what we would have into Social Security. So that's a huge benefit. Things like health insurance. I think if you're further in your career, you really value the benefits and the security. If you're young and you're starting out, or you're an entrepreneur, you're willing to take some risks. So it depends kind of on the business and on the person.
That makes a lot of sense. And in my work, and I know I've partnered with the college on a couple of positions, and when I talk to people about working at a place like TJC, the benefits are attractive. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, another question that people want to know is how can they connect with some of your graduates, specifically on the medical side? You guys have done a tremendous job of developing a nursing program, and you have a great medical office management and medical assistant education here. How can businesses connect with those graduates?
One thing I would mention, students, they hear about nursing and they'll come and they'll want to enroll and don't realize there's a full array of other programs from, rad tech and respiratory therapy and all those others, and they'll find out there's a really good fit for those other programs. I think what I'd suggest is call my office, and I'll give the number. It's really hard probably for somebody from the outside to negotiate our system and call somebody, and then they're out on summer break or whatever. So my number is 903-510-2380, and someone in my office or one of the offices up here would be able to help negotiate our system and connect somebody.
Outstanding.
So that's probably the easiest and simplest. If you call our general number, that could be more hit or miss. So,
Sure.
so again, 903-510-2380.
Excellent.
And that's my number, and my successor, Dr. Mejia, that'll be his numbers. That'd be an easy one to get in touch with our offices.
Thank you so much for being accessible to the community that way. So along those same lines, many businesses, they recognize the value that TJC brings in terms of the education and the kinds of graduates that you have, and they love to develop a pipeline with a local college like Tyler Junior College. So how could a business better partner with TJC to provide opportunities for its graduates?
Lots of ways. We have some people, we've had dentists teaching our dental hygiene program, and part of that is because they want to get back, but it's also an inside track to hire really good hygienists. People serve
That's
on
a win-win.
serve on advisory committees,
Okay.
and the advisory committees in those career programs actually help determine the curriculum, set standards, really tell us what level of skills they want and need, and with the understanding they'll hire those graduates. And so helping us with the program, with the standards, and those are called advisory committees.
Okay.
And so someone could,
What kinds of people would you be interested in to be a part of those committees?
really, CEOs, hiring personnel, people who have some expertise in designing a program.
Okay.
And we will lead them through. If it's a new program, we actually design a curriculum. If it's a program that's up and going, they help us keep it current. In terms of teaching, we have faculty. We have great faculty here. It brings in new blood with adjuncts, people who are working during the workday and find time to teach. And so when you have a judge or an attorney or a business person come and bring in real world situations, that really enlivens the teaching and the curriculum. So we love hiring people. We don't pay what we should, but there's a lot of satisfaction, and I think people enjoy teaching for us. And again, if somebody has the credentials, you have to have a master's degree in your teaching field for any of the transfer, but for the workforce, probably a baccalaureate degree.
Well, I know several professionals in the community who do just that. They are adjunct professors or teachers here, and I found in talking with them, it's like you said, it's rewarding, but it also they develop relationships with those who are graduating and kind of have first dibs on the top graduates for their business or industry, and so that like we've said is a win-win. If somebody, back to the advisory committee, if somebody felt like, you know what, I may have something to contribute to a committee like that, what would be their next step?
Again, if somebody calls my office, probably the easiest way, we would try to determine what field. And the advisory committee meetings aren't cumbersome or don't take a lot of time. Typically you'll meet, depending if it's a brand new program, you'd meet more often. If it's an existing program, often they meet a few times a year, maybe a couple times a year, review curriculum, have lunch. But it keeps the programs fresh. And again, call my number and we'll try to figure out what background you have and where there might be a fit.
Excellent. I've participated on the IT program advisory committee as an IT recruiter in town, and it's been a very good experience for me. It hasn't been a huge time commitment, but it's been really great just to how accessible and responsive you guys have been to our communities. I really appreciate that. One of the things you said at our luncheon that I really appreciated was that people are rarely fired for a lack of skills, but most of the time it's an attitude or work ethic. So from your experience, how do you determine that when you're interviewing somebody or considering to hire somebody?
Sure. Actually, we've used express employment with some success, and I know you haven't asked me for a plug, but I'll give one anyhow. That's worked out well because interviews have very poor predictive value. Sometimes I wonder why we do them even, but I think you're trying to figure out, is this somebody that would fit? But in terms of all those other variables, you don't get those in a half an hour interview. But the single best predictor is a work history. And, so we'll try somebody out. And, that's worked really well. It's not a matter of skills. Almost never that people get fired. It's absenteeism. Have they got their lives organized enough to show up for work? They've got a lot of other things going on they're juggling. But no matter how smart and energetic and skilled somebody is, if they don't show up, their productivity for us is zero. And that really impacts. So can somebody get their life together and show up? Are they sane enough to go to work people have issues sometimes that you're not aware of. The stuff that gets people fired, number one, is absenteeism. I think surveys have shown.
Sure.
Probably the other is just work attitude. Attitude trumps everything. And if you've got somebody who really cares and wants to be part of a solution, they'll develop the skills. Attitudes are much harder. Other stuff that happens, just how you work with people. Do you drive them crazy? Do you get along with others? Do you use deodorant? Just
Absolutely.
simple things.
Yeah.
I think employers really want somebody who's mature. I think we're all looking for somebody who's more like a 25, 26, 27-year-old who's had some experience.
Of course.
And been around and kind of knows what an employer wants.
Sure.
So the best predictor for us over the years, for me, has proven to be calling and checking the work history and doing some in-depth references. If I know the person well enough, where they're not going to just give me employment dates, and that can be a sign too.
Sure.
But if there's a relationship and I can call you and say, I'm not taking notes, this isn't going to be an issue, but is there anything I should know? Is there, what kind of reliability and all? And so that work history is so much more important than an interview.
I totally agree. I love what you're saying about the most important predictor of what somebody will do is what they have done.
Yeah.
And so many times in my interactions with businesses, they fail to explore what they have done and take the time to speak to references if you can. And so I think that is so important for our listeners to hear. And then the other thing I really love about what you said is you can train skills in a lot shorter time period than you can train an attitude that somebody's been practicing for their whole life. It takes a lot of years to change that. And so looking for signs of those soft skills and attitudes towards work and life stage and things is a really important element of making a hire. Thank you for that feedback. Anything else that you'd like to say to our viewers about hiring in East Texas? Lay it on us.
Oh, sure. Well, just to go back for a second, years ago, I think I was 20. I just turned 20 when I joined the Peace Corps. And they had a similar situation where they were going to place in a whole new culture. And what I discovered back then, and what they actually researched us all over the place, and the best predictor of who would be successful in another culture, I thought would be language. I was in a Spanish-speaking culture, and so they even tested you to see your adaptability and how well you'd learn a language. And that was not the best predictor.
Really?
What actually turned out to be the best predictor were peer ratings of us all together and how we work together. And it makes sense that somebody who's a pain in the butt here would be one overseas just as well. And if you didn't get along, if you couldn't laugh at yourself and all, you probably weren't going to be, you weren't successful where you were, and you wouldn't be where you were going. You took that with you. And over time, even when we meet as presidents, college presidents, often. When I was in Washington State, it was every month. Here it's quarterly. And I'd look at the other presidents and kind of assess, And I could predict who was going to be successful often by how they related to all of us. If somebody was arrogant, difficult with their peers, imagine how they were as the CEO in their campus. And so anyway, those kinds of behaviors are really important. And what I found was that someone who was successful in one place managed to figure it out and be successful in another, even though it was very different, even though, Dr. Mejia here is a great example, who's following me, was very, very successful in the Rio Grande Valley. East Texas is very different, but he's been enormously successful here. And so, those traits. Go ahead. I'm sorry I didn't answer your question.
No, that's great. For somebody to think about, it reflects some of the other discussion we had at the luncheon. Another panelist mentioned a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player that talks about looking for somebody who's hungry, humble, and people smart.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't matter how much you know or how good you are at a skill if you cannot interact with other people. That's going to be a non-negotiable in almost every case.
And people I've fired, not because I wanted to. I remember the scariest thing I did as a new dean on the campus was the only person we had in IT was so skilled and knowledgeable, so way beyond any of us. And he could explain why we weren't able to do something because of the technology or because of things we didn't understand. And then there were other issues, and after I helped him leave, and we hired somebody who had maybe half the skills but tremendous attitude, things got done. And so finding a way to say yes, always, it's easier to train skills. And you asked about East Texas. The people who live here are great folks. They like it here. You're not pulling in somebody from another area and then finding out they don't fit and they don't like it and they leave, and you've got all those costs sunk in. If you find somebody who's really good here and you help them build those skills, and we do it in my business and we help others. We've done everything from sort of a golden handcuffs where we'll pay for somebody to get advanced degrees, but they'll sign a promissory note. I used to keep them on my computer, and we would encourage and support people with the understanding that they'd give back and stay here for 3 years.
So you're making an investment in them, which pays off for
Big
them. And you're saying, I value you. We need you to stay here and return that investment a little bit.
Over time, and especially in South Texas when we were starting out, there were a lot of people who didn't qualify in a national search, and we were looking for young leaders. And I'm proud that I was 14 and I'm just a new CEO, so there are 15 CEOs that I've mentored that have gone on to college presidencies or CEO level. And the way we were able to do that is we gave them a chance to try as an interim, because they would not have had the skills to compete. So but they had the attitude and could develop. So we put them in place as a director, manager, or whatever, and then wow, did they shine and kept going on with that kind of support. So here at the college, we do have programs. We have workforce grants. We have continuing training. I'd have to look at my notes for a minute, but there's an amount that an employer can get for somebody who's currently employed, and I think it's about twice as much for new employees.
Okay.
So we have different programs. They range from continuing education and certification, even tailor-made training.
Could a business find out about that on your website or call in your office? How would they find out about that?
Again, could call here. Or our West Campus is where we do most of that.
Okay.
But if there is a new business, we have different vehicles for helping start up, and we can do everything from a on-site training for a small class. We can do employers can release employees. I think you and I had talked where somebody was taking IT courses in the evening, or the employer worked with them, or maybe paid the tuition or reimbursed it. I mean, there's a whole variety, and one of them is likely to fit an employer.
That's great. Good stuff. All right, we've got a couple rapid fire questions for you just because people want to know a little bit more about the real Dr. Metke. So, is there a podcast that you enjoy listening to?
Yeah, there's several. When I'm driving to Austin or whatever, I like Radio Lab and Planet Money, some of those kinds of Hidden Brain. Those are fun to listen to, and the time passes and you feel it's a little more productive than being caught in traffic.
Absolutely. What about books? Anything you're currently reading?
I've been so busy in reading charts and graphs and nonfiction. I'm back into All the Light We Cannot See, and it's good. When I'm traveling, I probably read more escape stuff like
Sure.
I like Daniel Silva, the Gabriel Allon series. I like John Sanford, the Prey series. And those are just fun if you're traveling on an airplane or something. But yeah, I get enough, and I do read some nonfiction, but it's fun with the fiction as well.
Good stuff. Okay, so hot topic in employment is all these millennials, right? And now Gen Z coming behind them. Any tips from your perspective on a campus full of Gen Z and millennials and other generations? If you're a manager, perhaps of an older generation, any tips for them on managing or dealing with millennials and Gen Z?
First of all, I think we typically exaggerate all that. I think the older generation always thinks everything's going to hell with the younger generation. I mean, that's been going on since the days of the Greeks and Romans.
Sure.
I think the real research, most of this is anecdotal, and some of us, haven't adapted as fast to technology. There is the idea about the me generation, and I think they value more the flat organization and communications. Actual research isn't showing this great divide that we talk about. And they really seem to be fitting in more as they mature and get into their jobs. And so I think the problem is exaggerated. There are some differences, but actually if you look at some of the bigger research, the differences between the generations, they're not very big, hardly measurable. And I think it's maybe more focused on some of us, more white educated, and our kids in a sense of entitlement. In terms of the whole workforce, I don't know that the data is really there.
Okay.
I think dignity and respect and treating people the way you want to be treated, those old kind of standbys, still work. Here at our place, I think there's like no other, a family feeling. People talk about the TJC family and how we look out for each other. I think loyalty goes both ways. And so employers expect somebody to be loyal and aren't willing to give some of that back. But I don't know that I have any specific tips. We have multi-generations here working, and it's surprising. We've had people, again, millennials or Generation X, they'll leave and they'll discover that, hey, that workplace that paid a little bit more didn't feel the same, and they'll come back.
So what I'm hearing you say is everybody take a breath.
Yeah.
And if you create a work atmosphere where there's mutual respect, there's good communication, and you can bring people up as they mature, it's going to work out.
I believe so. And I think too, I discovered in my own career where there's a peer culture and all. And so where I was as a young person, union environment and all, and my friends, it was expected you just take a day off when you felt like you needed a day off, and you take a sick day. And when the employer started to pay attention to that, it was like the behavior changed. Behavior responds to what you attend to. And so if the expectations aren't there and the standards aren't there, then you may have issues. And you ask, can you change behavior? Yes, you can. Attitudes are harder to change, but certainly you can set expectations, and your great employees are going to thrive.
Good stuff. Okay, one more question. Earlier this year, Dr. Metke, you announced your retirement at the end of this month in June 2019. And just as somebody who has two teenagers who are taking advantage of dual credit programs and the TJC Promise, I'm personally impacted by the leadership that you've offered here. So thank you. I hope that that's been rewarding for you. But as you kind of hit the finish line and look ahead for TJC as you make the handoff, what do you see as the outlook for Tyler Junior College?
You know, if I were buying stock, I'd buy stock in TJC.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Mejia has been here for 5 years. We've known each other for 30. All of the initiatives that we've been involved in the last 5 years, he's been heavily involved and supportive. So I think the college is at a great place right now, and I think this is the best executive team I've ever had, and the TJC family will take TJC to new heights. I think too, if you look at the population in the public schools, I think TJC is in a great position. When I was young, I read all the futurology stuff, and I thought we'd all be flying to work in our cars and all that. And I learned over time that almost all of that's wrong. But the one thing you can rely on in research is demographics, because those are people that are here, and they're going to grow up, and they're going to get jobs, and they're going to hopefully buy homes and whatever. If you look at the public schools now, the population that's there under previous research, I looked at 50 years worth of retention research. Almost all of those students would be considered at risk under those criteria. So the population coming in and what we're seeing, instead of going full-time, 18-year-olds, over half of them are working full or part-time while they're here. A large number have children, they're soccer moms and dads. They're working, they're going to school. It's a different demographic. The children in public school now, I think, are close to 60% Hispanic in the elementary schools. So you've got great family values, great work ethic, but families that haven't experienced higher education. I think I read, at least at one time, the average Hispanic family, when I looked at the data, was the educational attainment was 5th or 6th grade. So great families, great work ethic, no experience with higher ed. Those students, if we can create the college-going culture, the Promise program, all the things we're doing, they're not going to go to a selective university to start. They're going to come to TJC. And we either get it right here or they can be lost to the workforce in terms of skills. Anyway, so we're working really hard. I think the population in the schools is more attuned to starting out at TJC, and after they're successful here, they'll go on, thrive, reach their full potential. But I think TJC and that Promise program, where we now have over 3,000 students signed up who are earning scholarships, I think is going to change our world.
Well, it's changing my world and my house, so I'm a big believer in that. Dr. Metke, thank you so much for your insights and being available to us today, and I'm sure it's going to be valuable to those who listen. I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.